I'd like to introduce something I call Value of Gain Plus. It's a system I've come up with that has helped me look at potential purchases and do a lot of analysis. I've I've always liked value of gain. Um, it's a wonderful thing. Used it for years. Lately, it's been used in tandem with sell by marketing. This is not sell by marketing. I have great respect for it, for sell by, and the people who practice it and teach it. However, there are people for whom that is not their chosen path, and a lot of those people have some confusion about the utilization of LRP in their operations and just how to make the best decision for themselves when they're sitting at a sale barn. So that's what I developed this for. I'm in that same boat. I really wanted this to work in tandem with LRP, and that's what it's designed to do. And we'll get into those details in just a second. The problem with value of gain in my mind has always been the raw value of gain, which is extremely useful, is or can be kind of limited. It tells me which deal is best, but is it best for me? Does it take into considerations like I don't want to put 3.5 pounds of gain per day on, or I need to be out of the field, out in the fields by the end of February, or I'd like to, I'm required to utilize um, 100% coverage in the LRP by my lender, or there's just so many factors in there that really can change things. I can go into specifics, if needed, but well, I'd love to, but I want to keep this kind of short. Again, it's really good, but let's go to value of gain, less costs equals net value of gain. And then let's put it in the context of our operation and the amount of capital we've got. So what I've done is start working on that. To work on that value of gain analysis, I've got some criteria. I can say I don't want to go over 2.5 pounds of gain per day, or I can only use these kinds of feeds, therefore my rations, etc. Minimum weights, I don't want to go under 400 pounds for my buys. I need to be at least 87%, and I want to be able to buy from these 7 markets that surround me, depending on where you are in the country. Then I add that all together, utilize the raw value of gain, which again I love, and then factor in some costs and put in things like feed costs. That's all automated in here. You can change your trucking, your death loss, all kinds of things. That gives me my net value of gain. So there's 4 functions I wanted from this thing. The first was, of course, the value of gain. The next was I wanted to have that number one in the context of my operation. Then I want to have a buy ticket so that when I go to a sale barn, I know more or less, what I should be looking at. Because all we're providing here is context. We still have to make the decisions on our own. But at least I've got something to work on that is better than, oh, they look pretty good. Well, that's pretty close. I think I could, I'm that kind of thing. Finally, I'd like a daily update or a periodic update that tells me, given the state of the market, I could do the following with the cattle I've already bought, including your own calves that are on the ground. I may have LRP'd them, I may not have, but I'd like to know what I could do right now. Should I sell? Should I buy? What should I do? So let's go through those steps as quickly as we can. There are simple steps to setting this up. Now, this is a one-time or periodic. It's not something you have to do every day. You put in your feed ingredients, some basic stuff that comes um, from feed test results or from tables that are generally available out there. Then, with the help of a nutritionist, I can do a little helping on that since I've done it for thousands and thousands of rations. We put together some basics. Now, we're not looking at doing this as precisely as a nutritionist would do. We want to be really close, but we know that at this point we're looking ahead. Again, it's context. The next thing that we do is We decide on those rates again. In this case, you can see that I've set an average daily gain limit of 3 pounds per day. I've set a date limit of February 19th. Got to be in the fields by the 1st of March. So I can't look at any deals that go further than that. Typically, that's not super helpful, but it can be. Input the financial constraints. So, for example, I've got $200,000 available. Of that, I'm putting up $25,000. Here's my interest rate. So that tells me tells the system what we're working with, and it calculates your interest down the road. Then you can choose the market you're likely to buy at. 2, 3, 5, 7, 10, whatever it is. We've got a separate system we're developing that lets us analyze dozens of markets. You can just specify the area and you can look at that and get that, again, context. So for example, you may have two markets close to you. One market sells on Monday, but you're not comfortable with that market. You like the market that sells on Wednesday. So Monday night, we load up the information, or Tuesday morning, we load up the information, we get your LRP values, and now you've got your context. You know what you could be doing. Then we would update it Wednesday morning so that when you go to the market, you have a pretty good idea based on last night's LRP and any local markets, you know, that have sold that week, what you might be looking at and what you should expect. Then you can decide on the amount of LRP coverage you want. This is very flexible and you don't have to do this. Finally, you would input any previous purchases you made. Let's say you bought something last July, you LRP'd it to the end of December. You've got certain costs, you've got an interest, you've got, et cetera, et cetera. We just put those things in there. Takes just a couple of minutes, and then they're and you don't have to do it again. Now the system goes to work. You can see this chart. There's some important things here. It looks at all the buy weights from 300 pounds to 700 pounds. Then it looks at the coverage from 100 down to 75. Then it looks at all the LRP months and all the sell weights, 600 pounds to 900 pounds. Uses the LRP classes 1 and 2. There's actually 5,000 different choices here that it runs through, and then it comes up with the top 10. Now, if you look at this, you can see that in this case, we've got 300, 350, 650s, 450s. All of them happen to be 800 pounders. This is the buy price on them. This is the sell price given the sell date and the coverage. This tells you your average daily gain and the number of days. So you can look at this and you might say, well, that's really, this is gross profit per head, by the way. You might say this is awesome, but I'm just not comfortable with that gain. Even though it's not 3, it's still pretty close. I really like this one because it takes me through August. The cattle are a little heavier coming in. I'd like to do this one. Or you might like these 650s, a little shorter. You get to take them to March and you're done. There's all kinds of different factors that, again, this is just context. Now, once you've done this, it tells you your gross profit, your profit per investment, your profit per day, and gives you those value of gain calculations, your gross, your net, and the spread between them. Now at this point, if you want to, you can choose one. We've chosen number 1 here, and you can do a deep dive into it. Here's a summary of the deal. Here's your raw value of gain right from that first table. Here's some of your details, and then here's all of this stuff. This is the guts of what you're doing, and this is why the net value of gain is so helpful. So for example, these are 3-weight calves. You might look at this and say, I want to bump my death loss right up to 3.5%, whatever you choose. You can change your morbidity, you can change anything you want. There are some helpful things. Your feed, your LRP premium, and your interest are all calculated for you based on what you've already put in. It just gives you everything, gives you a total production cost and a net profit per head. And then based on the financial constraints, in this case, there's 87 head is the maximum. And we just plugged in a number. You can buy 87 head, given all the pricing and all that stuff. And it calculates what you're going to need to borrow for things like trucking, feed, um, and your receiving protocols and that kind of thing. So it tells you you can afford to buy 87 head, and based on that full profit, on that lot size, you're going to make 33%, $33,000. Now we come down here to give you your return on capital, which is your full investment, in this case of 175,000 bucks. That's a nice little return, and that's the annualized. Now, in this case, the guy I did this for is using FSA financing, so really didn't have to put more than 3% up. So his return on investment, as opposed to return on capital, is significantly better. It's pretty stupendous. So once we've got this and we feel comfortable with this, we can go on to the next step, or we can choose to look at deal number 3, 4, 10, whatever you want to look at, and just really feel comfortable with what you're doing. Once you do, then we go to the next step, which is we have a buy ticket. So going to the market, we know that this is the class of, this is the weight of cattle that we're looking at. Here's the price that it's calculated on per pound, not per hundredweight. And then this is the profit. So this is our target, the intersection of these two things. But we're not going to get those cattle 100%. We might get 350s, we may get 400s. Probably not going to look at the 250s, so we haven't even, or 200s, we're not looking at those. So this tells you if you're at 550, you're not making near as much money. But if you can get them at 450, you're going to be really close to your target. So it gives you that context so that you're looking at this thing and saying, here's what I need to pay, here's the most I can pay, here's what I'm comfortable paying for whatever weight and class of cattle come out of the alley. The next thing it does is it helps you look at the alternative courses of action. This is the position you've already put in there. You bought these cattle at 300 pounds on 17th of July. You paid 525 100. They're steers, and you bought 86 head. You LRP'd them for the 28th of December of 25 at 100% with an end weight of 525 and a projected price according to the LRP of that. So now let's take a look at where you are sitting today. Here's your existing position. You bought them for that. You've had a little bit of death loss. You've done some treatments. You had 35 bucks worth of trucking. You put in some meds to bring him on. You've got about $400 worth of feed in there. It hasn't calculated the commissions yet because you don't have any. Here's the LRP premium that you're going to be obligated to pay, and here's the interest that you will pay by the end of that LRP. So you've got a total cost of that, and you've locked in a lovely loss of $425. Not the best, but the market's not there. Let's take a look at today's market. They've gained a little better than you think. And so if you held them to your maturity date, you think they'll be about 700 pounds. Well, even though your LRP is right there, you know, the LRP is suggesting that they expect cattle prices for 7 weights to be at 326 on that maturity date, middle of December. So you've, instead of getting a $1,736, you're going to have a $2,200. That's a big difference. Most of this is the same. There's a couple of additions. We've got the 4577 in for commissions, and actually that's it. So everything else is the same. So instead of being net negative, you look like you might actually make a little money on these cattle, assuming the market doesn't go to hell in a handbasket between now and the end of December of 2025. So let's take a look. If you sold today, right today, what would you get? You figure that today they're right around 600 pounds. Then we look that up. You say we can either look it up in the LRP, or you can look at the markets that are around you and say, I think they're worth about 373. That's a $2,238 net net gross to you. Here's where you're at. Here's your commissions in here, your LRP premium, and you'll notice that because you're selling today, you're paying a little less interest. So you're going to clear a grand total of $16.46 per head. Okay, all of that needs to be taken in the context of this potential buy that you've identified, that number one. So let's take a look at what it looks like. you'd be selling these things, you'd be selling them at 800 pounds, 328. You can only, you have 67 head in this lot. I messed this up. And now you're looking at this, you're going to make $292, which is better than all of these alternatives. So if you sold today, sold this, the cattle you've got here right now on your place today, and bought these, you'd net $308. So it gives you a little bit more information and a little bit better perspective of what the alternatives are if you chose to do something different. So that kind of wraps up the value of gain plus. There's some potential there for somebody to use this to really make a difference in what they do, I think. Thanks for taking time.